Well, so I want to talk about a Greek named Eratosthenes, or Eratosthenes. I thought it was Eratosthenes, but anyway, Eratosthenes, Eratosthenes, I guess. This is a guy who lived from 276 BC to 195 BC, and he was able to calculate the circumference of the Earth to within 2 to 16% accuracy, depending exactly on which unit of the stadia that you use. Um, uh, so that's pretty damn accurate. Now he did this way before we would be worrying about if but the Earth is flat. We don't even know that yet. I mean, sort of speculative. He had to wait what, thousands of years for it to be conclusively proven what he had assumed for his calculation. He had to assume an unknown thing, that it was round in the first place, to go ahead and calculate it. Now, this is also quite interesting because while many of us would say, well, you got to get into space to see it, no, you can follow logical conclusions. He did a very clever thing. He knew about high noon and the solstice in Alexandria, where the sun is directly overhead, and he knew. Well, I'm sorry. In Swenet, on the solstice, the sun goes directly overhead, but in Alexandria, it's some 7 degrees off of being overhead at the very same time. He estimated the difference between. He got the angle of the sun from the angle of the shadow off of a stick at that time, and he could use that to calculate the circumference of the Earth and wait 2,000 years for it to be confirmed. Okay, this is how science works. It's speculative, and sometimes people hit the nail on the head and won't know for a long period of time. You know, other times it's things like Ptolemy's system or the ether. These are two other kinds of situations we can have. Ptolemy's system did a lot of work. What, over 1,000 years, you know, it was used to calculate the positions of heavenly bodies, and it worked. But it was based on a totally, you know, beyond speculation, just wrong kind of theological ideas about the heavens. The mathematics was just made to work through reverse engineering and accommodations. Like, oh, we want to use circles, so fine, circles and circles. You can get approximations through that. Or the ether. Now, the ether was different. The ether was a very common sense assumption. It's like light is acting like waves. It's got to have something to go through. So that's a very understandable common sense assumption. And yet that turned out to be fantasy. So what do all three of these kinds of approaches have in common that make them part of science? Is that there's falsifiable claims. That's the only issue. That, and you need to compare to other theories. There is no requirement in science to not be fanciful, just according to someone's feeling of what sounds fanciful. Like, the Earth is round, oh, how fanciful. No, it's flat, how fanciful. I mean, that's an emotional reaction based on, you know, where your head is at. You just have to make falsifiable claims, and then you need more than one system, ideally, you know? So, who do we have in the area of consciousness? As far as I know, it's this quantum consciousness, and in science, rather, who do you have? Quantum consciousness and neurocomputational theory. You know, idea if you get computers fast enough, or that there's some algorithm that can allow a Turing machine to be conscious. Okay. As a programmer, I don't see that at all. I mean, it doesn't matter how fast the computer, if you load Microsoft Windows on it, it's not going to be conscious. And if there's some other kind of algorithm that would accomplish it, we don't know it yet, as far as I know. Certainly not widely or well known. Maybe in some lab somewhere. But I doubt it, from what I know about programming. So that leaves quantum consciousness out there as, well, it's fanciful compared to our knowledge, which is almost nil. but I don't see anything else better. We could go out of science and say it's the spark of God sitting inside you. I don't like that idea. So we have to dive in. It can't be, kit gloves here. It's just, well, I have the subjective experience. It should yield to analysis. It's been confusing to us. It's like seeing the atmosphere. It's like you look through the atmosphere. It's like seeing your own consciousness. And I'm talking to people right now who don't have a clear idea that they're experiencing it. They have some basis. They think, well, prove it. How do you know we're having a subjective experience? What? I know I'm having one because of introspection. I'm self-conscious. I have the sense to watch myself thinking in some sense. And that's what I'm talking about, that phenomenon. But what if it is other than it seems? I think it is other than it seems, but it's there, something. I'm trying to figure out how it seems in detail. People aren't realizing, and yet they know they're having their own sensations, but they just don't click. What does that mean? Eventually it means, yeah, I can understand how a biological process of robotic or any sort could behave in reaction to gathering its survival needs and this sort of thing. That doesn't solve the hard problem of why would that thing on the inside, sure, it would behave. I'd watch it behave like a living thing. I could see it pass the Turing test. But why would that imply that inside it has a feeling sensation of itself? Nobody can explain that at all. It's so far-fetched of a weird problem with so little threads that any discussion of it's going to be speculative. For thousands of years, the discussion of it has been religion, and God put it in there, and that's your soul. Okay? I'm not accepting that. Those of you who say, stop, hammer off, don't make falsifiable theories about this fantastical stuff, you're leaving it to them. Okay? That doesn't take it away from the religious people. They own it now. If you want to get it from them and make it a mundane, physical, whatever is going on is what's going on and no more kind of process, then you have to engage with, you can't be frightened like, no, we don't want to hear about theories of consciousness, because then you're just leaving it to religion. No, let's ignore the whole problem, it doesn't really exist. Excuse me, every single person, and I think every single animal, and I think living things in an analogous way at least, but at least every human being is having a conscious experience throughout their life, continuously. You think you can just ignore that phenomenon? It doesn't really need, it's not widespread enough for you to be the kind of thing that we'd want to know about. You're reacting to a fear because religion has owned this subject. But when you insult those that would speculate on the subject scientifically and refuse to respect the scientific aspect, which has nothing to do with whether the theory suits you, just whether it's falsifiable. Because you could go out there and go, that's falsifiable, I'm going to go falsify it. That's science. It's not about creating things that everybody agrees on. There's supposed to be disagreement. It's falsifiable because somebody's going to come along and not like that. You're one of the people that don't like it. But to actually go to the level of, it's way too speculative, we shouldn't do it, you're just leaving this most important human experience and phenomenon in the hands of mystics, when in reality we could put math and science. And if you want to watch Hammeroff and go, but he talks like a mystic sometimes, it doesn't matter. You have to just go to the falsifiable things he says, and that is where you will collect what he's really claiming and how you can really disprove it or not. And you can talk about his, his opinions and philosophy, of course, but you can't say his scientific work isn't scientific just because he has some other theories. I mean, Newton believed in God, okay? It doesn't mean that Newton's laws were affected by that. Even if they were, the development of them were affected. You don't need to know that to judge if F equals MA.